Businesses are gearing up for more changes as the minimum wage increases in Ontario and many sectors reach the deadline for their vaccine mandates. But often employers respond to such circumstances by restructuring and even terminating employees. For more on this, employment lawyer Lior Samfiru joins us now to break down your workers' rights. Good morning to you, Lior. Let's start with the business costs of increasing minimum wage. What rights do workers have if they lose their job as a result of employers cutting costs?
Well, Marianne, that is always a concern that employees have, that will I lose my job because it's going to cost more to employ me? So we have to understand that an employer is allowed to let an employee go for most reasons so long as severance is paid. So there's really no such thing in a non-union environment as job security. An employee could ultimately lose their job, but that employer will have to understand that there's a cost to that as well. Severance will have to be paid, and depending on the length of employment, Marianne, that severance can be as much as 24 months' pay. So it's not as simple for an employer to just say, you're let go. There's going to be a cost to that too.
And with the minimum wage increase, that's set to begin at the beginning of the year. That's about 60 days away. And a lot of businesses didn't have a lot of notice about this. So we know that employers have also been known to make subtle changes to offset the costs from having a higher minimum wage, such as reducing benefits or cutting break times. Can they legally get away with that?
So whenever we're talking about changes to terms of employment, this concept of constructive dismissal should come to mind. An employer generally cannot make significant changes to terms of employment. If it does, that could be considered a constructive dismissal. An employee can choose to treat that as a termination and leave with severance. Now, when it comes to compensation, generally anything 15 to 20% in terms of a pay reduction would be considered a constructive dismissal. So it's not as simple for an employer to just say, we're going to get rid of benefits, we're going to reduce pay, we're going to change overtime rules. There could be absolutely legal consequences to doing that.
All right, something for businesses to keep in mind. Let's switch now to vaccinations. We know more companies are reaching the deadline for their employees to be vaccinated for COVID-19. So will employees who get fired for refusing to get the jab be entitled to employment insurance?
So the people that would be deprived from employment insurance and severance too are people that are terminated for cause. Now we have to remember, just cause is the capital punishment of the employment relationship. It's reserved for the worst offenders. So you would have had to do something really, really bad to be terminated for cause and then be deprived from EI. For most people that choose not to be vaccinated, that termination would not be a just cause termination because there's no government mandate that applies for most people. So because of that, if they are going to lose their job, they're going to be entitled to severance, and they should also qualify for EI. Again, this concept of just cause has to be kept in mind.
And when we're talking about terminations or looming terminations, it's of course very stressful for employees. So what advice do you have for workers facing the possibility of losing their jobs without severance and without employment insurance?
Marianne, I've already been speaking with literally thousands of people across the country that have lost their job or are about to lose their job because of this vaccine status. So the advice ultimately is this. If there's no government mandate that applies to you and you lose your job, if you're part of a union, you can work and should work with your union to file a grievance. You can potentially get reinstated with back pay. For non-unionized employees, they're able to file a wrongful dismissal claim to get compensation, to get a proper record of employment that applies for EI, that they cannot use to apply for EI. So you can pursue a wrongful dismissal if there's no government mandate. Now, if there is a government mandate that requires your employer to have you vaccinated, you're going to have very limited options because your employer's hands will be tied in that point. But that, as we know, Marianne, only applies for a very small number of employees.
All right. Thanks so much. Great tips as always. That's employment lawyer Lior Samfiru.
Thank you.